Welcome to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and today we are on our 24th in-depth character review where we are looking at the next highly requested clone, and that is Echo. Just like Commander Cody and Rex, he was also a Chromium exclusive character at one point who recently became free to play, and a lot of people want to know what is good about him. So just like the last two in-depth reviews, to learn more about this character, I have some exclusive content when I was visiting Electronic Arts, as well as some content provided by Mick Mole 2, who is a new and upcoming YouTube channel who has a lot of content on clones, and they were happy to help me out with this, so please check out their channel if you want some more clone specific content. But anyways, let's go ahead and pull up the Hall of Fame and see where we are so far. In our last review for clones, we looked at Commander Cody, and we placed him in the Knight category because outside of a clone faction, he is not all that special, but when he is in a clone squad, he is pretty darn good. But where is Echo going to fall on this table today? He's been around for a while, but we don't hear much about him, we don't see much information about him, and we just don't see him in action that much until more recently as of now. However, you are in the right place, and today we are going to talk about all of that. So let's go ahead and talk about the history of Echo before getting into that information for Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. And Echo, just like all of the other clones, was created off the DNA blueprint of Jango Fett on the planet of Kamino. He was given the name Echo because he was known to always go by the book and rules established for clones. He was essentially echoing the rules, as they would say. Echo's career as a clone trooper eventually had him inducted into the 501st Legion upon ruining Grievous's plans to capture the Rishi Moon, which was a critical battle in protecting Kamino. Echo's story eventually came to a close during a mission to rescue Jedi Master Peel. While attempting to protect the shuttle to escape, a commando droid used a laser cannon and blew up the ship, with Echo being a part of that explosion. In Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes though, we continue to see Echo go by the book and provide many opportunities to help his allies when they are in need and to clear the way so his team can accomplish the task at hand. So the first thing we are going to talk about now is how do we unlock this character. As I've mentioned earlier, Echo used to be a Chromium Pack exclusive character, and for roughly $200, he can be yours. As many of us know, however, he became a free-to-play character as of November 2016, and there are two free-to-play methods you can get him. The first way is the fleet shipments. That's where he originally came out for the free-to-play player, and then a few weeks ago, he became available in the guild store. So with a combination of those two, you can easily get him the 7 stars, but of course you can also get him in Chromium packs, but I recommend getting him with the former two methods. Now it is time to get to the peanut butter and jelly of these reviews, where we look at the character before mods and abilities are considered when analyzing their key stats in the game, and we segue right into the pros section, and he is actually great in a couple of things here. Firstly, when it comes to speed, we see that he is number 37. The average speed as it stands today is 127, and Echo is just a tad above that at 129, which puts him in the top 50%, just enough to keep him in the pros section. Now the rest of these pros are just pretty much damage dealing things, and that's great to see. In max damage, he just makes it for the pros, where he is number 44. The average amount of maximum damage in this game is 5,453, and Echo is at 5,465, yet again, keeping him in the top 50%. Maximum basic damage, which he will be using quite often as we will soon come to see, he is number 37 in this category. The average is 4,251, and Echo is 4,458, putting him around that top 35% mark right there. The last pro we have to talk about is AoE, or Area of Effect, or some people like to just call it Attack on Everyone, however you like to think of it. He is number 1, numero uno in this category, with the average being 2,992, and Echo, before mods and all that stuff are considered, he is at 5,465. So that's the person who's been owning the AoE leaderboard for a while. Oh no, and when looking at the averages, he's actually not average in any of the major stats, which makes this the third video in a row where we have to go straight into the stuff that Chewbacca wants to cry about. The clone reviews are making it difficult on Chewbacca's poor giant heart, but we will make it through, I promise you that much. So let's go ahead and look at these cons, but really they aren't the worst things in the world when you think about it. In terms of health, he is number 57. The average is 19,166, but Echo is just slightly below the median and definitely below the average, where he is at 16,850. So he just missed the cutoff for the averages, but he is definitely starting to be below the bottom 50%. Getting on to protection, also not the worst thing in the world because the average is 19,617 and Echo is just slightly below the median here and the average, where he has 15,939 protection. And these last two things, this is where his bad stuff really starts to play out. The first bad thing is armor, where he is number 97 in armor, with the average being 227. Echo is at 160, putting him in the bottom 5%, which means he will take a lot more damage than other characters like Sun Fac, Old Ben, General Kenobi, all those big guys. And the other thing, armor penetration's also not looking too good, where he is number 89. The average is 53 and Echo is at 27, which means he will just have a hard time piercing through the armor of someone like Old Ben, Sun Fac, General Kenobi, like the same characters I mentioned before, which puts him around the bottom 10% in armor penetration in the game. So just like the past two clones, he has a lot of pros and a lot of cons, nothing in between, but we have to look at the kit to start understanding what his purpose is, and we first look at supporting fire. He deals physical damage with this basic attack to the enemy that you targeted, and he grants a 20% turn meter bonus to another random ally with less than 50% turn meter. And this deals about 4,034 to 4,458 damage. So always granting 20% turn meter on his basic is great and perfect for someone like Cody. Only downfall is that this is kind of random and unpredictable most of the time when you have all 5 team members alive. He will also use this ability very frequently since he can assist, so he will be giving out a lot of turn meter bonuses. The next thing, Emp Grenade. This deals physical damage to all enemies and dispels all positive status effects on them. And this does about 4,945 damage to 5,465 before mods and abilities are considered. So he is one of 4 characters that can remove all positive status effects, which is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful mechanics in the game. Although very high damage numerically speaking, in the big picture it won't be as deadly as Lando 88 Wedge, but there are times where this could hit around about 10,000 on a critical hit, and later on during my subjective part of the review, I will explain why we don't see Echo that much despite having this very powerful special attack right here. But getting on to the next thing, we look at By the Book, very Echo-like, where clone allies recover 7% of their max health whenever they use a basic ability. This effect cannot trigger more than 2 times before their next turn and is disabled if Echo is defeated. So this is like a mini Commander Cody Zeta ability. Works great under Commander Cody Zeta because this means on a basic, clones will gain 5% protection from Commander Cody and 7% of their health from Echo. Very great for Galactic War and the AAT raid when paired together because this makes characters like Fives super deadly and tough to defeat, and this is even before considering Barriss Offee in the equation. And the cap on this ability is mainly to prevent characters like Fives from over-generating too much health because, as we know, Fives can counter-attack twice in a row and he can just constantly keep attacking. And the last ability is called Follow Up. Whenever an ally uses a basic during their turn, Echo has a 30% chance to assist, dealing 40% less damage. This assist chance is doubled if the attacking ally is a clone. So this is the mini version of Captain Phasma, pretty much. Getting an extra attacks from assists means you'll be granting turn meter more often. Great thing is he does not need to be in a clone team to use this, so this is kind of a catch-all unique ability. And the last thing we need to talk about before the subjective review is the gear, and we start up with the raid gear. The average amount of raid gear needed is 3, and Echo is just a tad above this at 4 pieces being needed, with the first piece being needed at gear 8, 2 being needed at gear 9, and 1 being needed at gear 10. And those pieces are the Mark V Fusion Furnace, the Mark V Droid Collar, Mark 7 Nubian Scanner, and the Mark 6 Nubian Design Tech. Scooting on over to the gold gear, the average is 200 pieces being needed, and Echo, just like raid gear, he's just a tad above this, needing 220 pieces, and you will need at least 1 Mark 8 biotech implant to get him from gear 10 to gear 11. And finally, the gear that makes you just get a little fuzzy inside, and that is the purple gear. The average amount needed is 1,110, and Echo needs 1,190, which means he is number 36 in terms of purple gear requirements. And if you're trying to prepare for Echo, you will need a mixture of purple gear, but there are a couple pieces which are a bit more prominent, and he will need about 100 of the Mark 6 hypo syringes, and he will need, oddly, a high number of Mark 4 droid collars, and he will need about 120 pieces of those. And lastly, blue, green, and white gear. We are above average for blue for Echo here, and below average for green and white, but nothing too significant to talk about. And finally, we get to my favorite part of the review, where we talk about subjective opinions of this character, as well as Yoda's checklist. We talk about his mortal enemies, best friends, how to mod him, but we first have to start off with my thoughts on this character. So I want to answer the question finally about why don't we see Echo all that much, despite the fact that he has a mini Captain Phasma in him. He also has a mini Commander Cody Zeta in him, while at the same time being able to strip away all the buffs. Well, this is why. The B2 Super Battle Droid does pretty much all of what Echo can do and even more. The B2 Super Battle Droid will strip all buffs more often, it will participate in battle a lot more often, and can apply buff immunity. So in essence, Echo is just overshadowed, but he is not a bad character really. He's a decent all-around character that has some decent damage, he will assist often, give health regeneration, works in lineups outside of clones, and grants turn meter. All great things. When I determine if a character is at least a master, I kind of look at a few things. 1, can they work in many different lineups? 2, the role that they have, do they play that role very effectively? You don't have to be the biggest damage dealer, but if you're a support character or a tank, do you play that role correctly? Another thing I look for is, do you make your faction a lot better? It's not really required, but it's always great that if you're a clone, you make clones better. And yes, Echo does make clones a lot better. Similar to that, another thing I look for is, do you need someone to be really good? Kind of like my Ahsoka and Darth Vader review, they need someone to be very good. And Echo's, no, he doesn't really need someone else to make him better. Yeah, of course, he will work a lot better when in clones, but because of his kit, he will work outside of the clone faction. So that's another reason. So he has all the characteristics almost for what I consider a master. He's just overshadowed by characters that do the same thing but a lot better. So that's why we don't see him all that much. This last point I want to make kind of seeps into our best friends, but I highly recommend you do use Echo and clones because he makes them a lot better when he's under a Commander Cody Zeta lead and with a 5's Zeta. When you combine all those together, he will make 5's a super deadly demigod, and it will be a great lineup to run around nowadays in the current meta. But with that said, let's go ahead and start talking about his mortal enemies. Who are the people you should avoid or keep in mind when he's going up against them? Pretty much like most support characters, you want to avoid characters that can stun and ability block, like Palpatine, TIE Fighter Pilot, Count Dooku, Vader, Old Daka, Boba Fett, Pog the Lesser, Old Ben, the list just goes on and on and on. So those characters, if you're stunning or ability blocking support characters like Echo, they aren't playing their role in the game and they just become dead weight. They're not like tanks where they can be a stunned and ability block and still serve their purpose. Support characters just need to be clean of a lot of debuffs. And some other things to keep in mind, characters that can apply daze like Darth Maul as well as K2SO are also pretty deadly against Echo because one of Echo's main purposes is to grant turn meter to anyone. And if they're dazed by Darth Maul or K2SO, then Echo loses a very important purpose in the game, so keep that in mind as well. But let's go ahead and flip this pancake over and talk about something a bit more cheery, and that is Echo's best friend. When looking at best friends, Echo works in a lot more lineups than Commander Cody does, but he does work great with all of the clones, especially under a Commander Cody Zeta lead because of all the health protection regeneration bonuses Echo gives off. Also works great with Captain Rex lead because Captain Rex gives out a lot of turn meter when he's leading and Echo just gives out more turn meter. Also works great with Jedi such as Anakin Skywalker, General Kenobi, and I always keep forgetting to add this, but Plo Koon is also alright for clones. Not the best option, but he does work. Some other options. Stormtrooper Han gives out turn meter on top of Echo's turn meter, so that will always be a good combo. Also, Echo can work great in a buff stripping lineup. Let's say B2 and Baze. Echo could be there just to kind of fill in the gaps when they can't strip buffs themselves. And another option, Captain Phasma. As we know, Echo can assist quite a lot, and Captain Phasma will just give more opportunities for Echo to come in and get some assists and give out some more turn meter. So Captain Phasma is also a pretty close friend to Echo as well. The next topic up for discussion are the mods, and like a lot of support characters in the game, you have some flexibility on what you want to do, but for Echo, I would recommend getting some critical chance and critical damage mods like a lot of other characters. He is going to be getting in a lot of assists, and you want those assists to be as powerful as possible because he does get that 40% damage reduction on that basic when he does assist off someone's attack, and this also is a great idea when working under a Commander Cody lead or just with Commander Cody, because as we know, Commander Cody really revolves around critical damage attacks, and when he calls in that 212th attack, you want to be sure that Echo gets those critical attacks every single time to help reduce that cooldown. Offense mods are also a decent choice to help kind of compensate for that lack of damage a little bit, and health mods are also a great choice as well, just to make sure he's alive as long as possible. And for primary secondary mods, you have a lot of flexibility. I highly recommend getting a ton of speed so he's participating as much as possible, giving out a lot of turn meter off his basic. Critical chance, critical damage, protection, health, all of those are great for a support character, so you can mix and match it, he'll be fine. Lastly, let's go ahead and consult Yoda on the do or do not checklist, where we quickly go ahead and talk about if he's viable in many of the aspects in the game. And let's first take a look at Arena. I would definitely say do for this category. As I mentioned earlier, we just don't see him that much because of the B2 Super Battle Droid being a much better dispeller, but hey, Echo is just as good. If you get him at the beginning, he's going to do you quite well. Nothing wrong with getting him very early in the game. Galactic War, definitely do because of all that health regeneration he'll be given to clones. The turn meter he will give to everyone, he'll be great for there. Light Side and Cantina battles, they are both going to be a do. They're just kind of extensions of Arena and Galactic War, and he will be fantastic for reasons I've mentioned already. Mod challenges, nothing clone specific, so do not. But if you want to do the catch-all mod challenge where you can get health mods, you can use pretty much anyone, and Echo will do fine, but nothing specific for clones. Ships, also a do not, but that could also change. We see a lot of clones have ships, and Echo could just as well have one. The Rancor raid is also a do, not the #1 character to get, but he is helpful in phase 1 to get rid of all those buffs. He's also helpful because he can assist, give out turn meter, give out health. That's all great. So definitely good stuff for the Rancor raid. And AAT, definitely a do. I posted a video last week with him and the other clones, and they did a fantastic job. He assists, helps reduce the cooldown for Commander Cody, gives out health. He is perfect. So definitely a do for that as well. But now it is time to go ahead and pull up the Hall of Fame and see where we are going to rank this third X Chromium exclusive clone trooper that many of you have been asking for. And from Grandmaster to Youngling, I am going to put Echo in the Master status. Between my experience as well as other people's experiences that I talked to about this character, they all kind of agree that yes, he is overshadowed because of other better characters, but that does not mean he's bad. He works with a lot of other characters. He's not specific to just clones like Commander Cody is. He works great outside of the faction as well, so he's not dependent on other people, and he just has some good kits overall for a support character. Not the best, but it's definitely good, and it's a very flexible kit to work with other people. So in my humble opinion, I think Echo just barely clinched the very bottom rung of the Master category. So he fits in there, and I definitely think he's better than a lot of other people who are in the Knight category. So I hope you enjoyed this in-depth character review that we had for Echo today, and as many of you know, usually at this point 3 characters in a faction, I switch over to a new one. A lot of people have been asking to do the last 2 clones, so if you guys want to see the Clone Sergeant and 5s, I can totally get gameplay and do a video for them. So let me know down in the comments below if we should do another clone or the rest of the clones, or just move on to something else. So let me know what you guys think, and please, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we will talk again soon. Peace out.